You're listening to the Scrunchy Mom Tribe podcast. If you're crunchy curious, looking to make healthier, more mindful choices for your family without losing your damn mind, this is the place for you. I'm Dr. Eva, a certified perinatal and pediatric chiropractor, an IBCLC, and a mostly crunchy mom. In this podcast, I'm sharing all the simple, practical ways I've worked more holistic living into my home without totally going off the deep end. Let's dive in. Well, I gotta be honest with you guys, it's been a real doozy of a couple weeks, and I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag, so you're hearing it here first, but I am growing another child. I am, as of the time of this recording, 9 weeks pregnant with our second baby. And it hasn't really sunk in yet, if I'm being honest, and I remember feeling this way with my first pregnancy with Rocco, especially because with him, I didn't get any ultrasounds. I think we heard the heartbeat maybe around 15 weeks or so. I really didn't want to use the Doppler prior to that. And we used it just the one time to hear the heartbeat. And then our midwife used something called a fetoscope, where they're able to hear the heartbeat, usually after like 17 or so weeks from that point after. But I remember really until I felt him moving in there, it was very theoretical. I'm like, allegedly I am growing a child, but it doesn't really feel real. You know, in ways, I think this pregnancy feels a lot more real in the sense that I'm having a lot more symptoms. Let me tell you, I'm having all of the classic first trimester symptoms. I would say the biggest interference to my normal life is the heartburn. Oh, the heartburn has been crazy. I've actually never dealt with heartburn really ever. So it's like I've got to stay perfectly upright. I'm trying to squat down to help Rocco with things without bending over at the waist. I'm eating like tiny, itty bitty bits of just bland foods. And I feel like I am like at the beck and call of the heartburn. I'm living in fear of the heartburn. I actually have my first midwife appointment tomorrow. Or wait, no, today's Saturday. I have it today. Actually, I'm 10 weeks. I am 10 weeks today. Pregnancy brain. This is something that is very real this second time around. I feel like I just barely got my normal brain back, you know, after having Rocco. I feel like I still very much had mom brain for a long time. I was just starting to feel like I was like gathering my marbles back up. But alas, I know that our brains do change in motherhood, and there's an aspect of that that never changes back to the prior circuitry, but I know that it also is all on purpose, and that the way that our brains change are so that we are able to be more attentive caregivers and give our children what they need and focus on the things that are appropriate for this season of life, and maybe not be filled with all of the other various intellectual capacities that I used to rely on in my prior life before becoming a mom. So anyway, this has been very, very humbling overall. Definitely the fatigue. The fatigue is insane. The fatigue is off the charts. The motivation. And for me, as a business owner, as an owner of multiple businesses, I'm usually very gung-ho about doing things. I am a doer. I'm a multitasker. I like to work all the time. I don't mind logging onto my computer after my son's gone to bed. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I really, really love, is building a life for my family in the way that I want to do it. And I've always been just very intrinsically motivated to do that. I think even throughout my first pregnancy, I remained very motivated. And throughout my postpartum, I definitely took time to be in the energy of early motherhood, and I took space from that. But I always sort of felt that drive. I think that drive feels almost non-existent so far in this pregnancy, which has been very interesting to adapt to. So all of this to say that what I really want to talk about today, aside from just sharing some of the trials and tribulations of my first trimester with you, is some of the self-talk and some of the limiting beliefs that I feel like this has brought up for me in terms of the thoughts that are running through my head all day and the expectations I have of myself. And I really am trying to lean in to the lessons of this second pregnancy and see how things are happening for me and not happening to me. And of course, it's hard to be in that space when I am like writhing in pain and throwing up at 1 a.m. It's easy to feel like this is happening to me, but I know that there have been things I've been saying that I want in my life, shifts with the way that I am operating inside of our businesses that I'm putting off for someday or someday soon. And I feel that my body is demanding that I make those changes now. And for me to really be able to soften and lean into my own sense of worthiness. I deserve to be taken care of. I deserve to be loved unconditionally, even when I have days on end of suffering, that I deserve to have a partner that really wants to care for me and that I get to receive without feeling like there's a tipping of the scale, right? Like something's being measured and it's tit for tat, because I do notice I have a hard time being supported wholeheartedly by my husband. I like to feel like I'm pulling my weight, so to speak. I like to feel like I'm contributing positive energy to the relationship. I like to feel like I am providing positive leadership for my son and with our family and for our business and for our team members. And I really feel that since my body has been just completely since I've been feeling like shit, basically, it's been a lot harder for me to show up in all of those avenues. And I think for my husband to be covering shifts for me and also be running to the store to get me snacks and get me bland foods because I can't eat anything in the house, or I don't want to eat anything in the house. Or, we haven't really had fun hanging out at night after my son goes to bed because I'm like uncomfortable and I'm complaining about how uncomfortable I am. I notice that my own dialogue is like, man, you're being so negative. You're complaining so much. Why can't you be more positive and loving towards Rocco? You're being so irritable with him. You were so impatient with him. And I just notice how, and I've always known this about myself, I'm my own harshest critic. I've had to work for decades on my inner dialogue and how there are things that I will say to myself that I would never say to a loved one. And I would never judge anyone else in my life as harshly as I judge myself sometimes. So I know that this entire experience has been really amplified by the pregnancy hormones. That negative self-talk in my brain, I feel, has been amplified. I've given her a microphone, and all of a sudden, all the old stuff is creeping back in. And some of those feelings of unworthiness and some of those feelings, as I'm just really not feeling physically or emotionally my best, I'm noticing that I'm defaulting to some of those limiting beliefs and some of those doubts about myself and my deservingness to have these wonderful things in my life and to be able to show up subpar and to be able to trust that those things are still going to be there, to be able to do less active admin work on the practice and trust that the practice is still going to run and that it's going to grow, to be able to pull out more from patient care and be able to trust that my team's got it, that people are still going to have an amazing experience, and that I don't need to have my hands in every aspect of the practice, controlling everything in order for things to go a certain way or for things to have a certain outcome. So it's really asking me to trust and to lean into being provided for and allow myself to be provided for when I feel like I so often operate a little bit more in that masculine energy, wanting to be the provider, wanting to run shit, and just really lean back and kind of be more in my feminine energy, in the sense that I don't need to bring the structure and I don't need to bring the doing. I can simply receive, and I can actually continue to work towards the things I've been trying to magnetize myself towards over these last couple years, and continue to work towards those goals and trust that it can look completely different and I can still be moving towards those things in the energy of attraction. So it's just teaching me so much, and I'm really trying to integrate these things, and I'm grateful that I'm sharing them and that I'm able to share them with whoever is out there listening to these in reflections. And I hope that it resonates on some level, or maybe helps you feel less alone. Maybe you've dealt with really negative self-talk and feeling like you're judging yourself so freaking harshly. The inner voice, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I definitely have been a performer and I've been an achiever my whole life. And I think that even with Motherhood 1.0, when I had Rocco, I noticed that I had to get that sense of self-worth and that sense of achievement, that sense of like life satisfaction in a different way. I wasn't, quote, achieving in the same way that I was, but I was actually achieving in a much more monumental and epic way, which is creating life and then birthing life and then nurturing life. That's really the most epic thing that we can create and, quote, achieve. But it's not what my entire life of schooling and credentialing and all of that stuff was amounting to. I felt that I was really working towards professional success and professional achievement. To take a step back from that felt somehow counterproductive to everything I had worked towards on some level, even though I very much loved my son and I loved being a mom and I love being a mom. It's just some of these stories that continue to play, that continue to echo from cultural patterning that I think a lot of us are exposed to and a lot of us take in without maybe realizing that those scripts, those programs are running the show for us and running the expectations we have of ourselves, whether or not those expectations are remotely reasonable. Another theme that I want to touch on is that I recognize that even though I'm 10 weeks, I thought I was 9 weeks when I started this recording, it's kind of early on, to be sharing about a pregnancy, in the sense that a lot of people will wait until maybe 12 weeks or maybe the second trimester. And I've been sharing with people here and there. I shared with our team maybe a month ago. I shared with my family like right after I found out, when I was 5 weeks. And I've just been feeling in my heart that I want to share with people about my reality, about my experience. When people ask me, what's new? What's going on? I feel so disingenuous being like, nothing, same old, when really I'm like, oh my God, I'm growing another human. My world's turned upside down and I'm completely transforming my relationship to self and going through even deeper layers than I had the first time of identity and self-worth and yada, 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 what I really want for my life and where my values and priorities are. And I kind of want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I also really want to be a girl boss. But instead I'm like, I'm good. So I've been telling people, because it feels good to just be like, how are you? I'm pregnant. I'm 6 weeks, I'm 7 weeks, whatever. And that's been my truth for this pregnancy. I didn't tell really anyone in our practice with the first pregnancy until I was probably 20 weeks. I feel like I was very much showing, and a lot of people were just being like, I could feel them looking at me and wanting to ask, and I was just not ready to tell. Of course, inevitably, when I announced it, everyone was like, I thought so. I was wondering this, that, and the other. But this time around, I really just feel it on my heart to share more. I also think it's important that somewhere we have access to information about the experience of the first trimester. I think it can be really isolating to go through the first trimester without telling anyone in your world, that you're pregnant. Maybe you haven't told your workplace, you haven't told a lot of your friends. And I do think it is a defining aspect of our experience as humans to be growing a human. And I think there's a certain level of grace that we want to receive from people when we're probably not feeling our best, because ironically, when most people don't know and can't tell that we're pregnant, that's when we're feeling our worst. And we really could benefit from people cutting us some slack or offering us more support or covering a shift or two, or just having more compassion for however we're showing up. Now, that's not to say I have any judgment towards anyone that doesn't feel like sharing that they're pregnant in the first trimester. I certainly understand a lot of the concerns and hesitations and reasons why one wouldn't want to share early on. Again, myself being that person in my first pregnancy that really didn't feel ready to share until later on. So you're not on anyone's timeline but your own, and those factors are going to be different for every person. And I do think it's important to consider that whoever you want to loop in on your support team, you would want to trust these people, and you'd want to be able to keep them abreast of any changes throughout the pregnancy. And for me, if the big unspoken fear, which I think for a lot of us is that maybe you will have a loss still if you announce earlier in your first trimester, then you've got to kind of unannounce, or you've got to announce the loss. And that can be really uncomfortable to navigate and painful to navigate. And I've had to walk through that and really accept that that is a possibility. And if that were a possibility, am I still comfortable then having those conversations with the people that I've shared about the pregnancy? And in this situation, I determined that in fact I was, and that really for me, I feel excited about sharing every aspect of truth about this pregnancy experience, because I want other moms to feel less alone. I want moms to feel, that all of the various highs and lows of growing a human, especially in the first, early weeks, there's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of highs and lows, and a lot of those lows, the most painful things, a loss, those are really common. And a lot of us deal with that pain alone and without support, without community. So I really want moms to know that they're not alone in that, and that there's nothing wrong with them, and that they're not broken, and that they're still deserving of love and support. I also noticed that a lot of moms that are maybe not having a great time in pregnancy, whether it's the first, second, or third trimester, or sometimes, heck, it's the entire time, they're feeling pretty miserable, and they feel guilty about that because they think, I should be enjoying my pregnancy. I should be grateful that I'm growing this human life. I should, and they should all over themselves. And I hear that from moms in the practice all the time. And I'll say, speaking from being one of those people that loved my pregnancy experience the first time around, and now already being one of those people that's feeling kind of miserable with the pregnancy in a lot of ways, although I'm still very happy and grateful and excited to be pregnant, it's not like everything's rainbows and daisies. That's also okay to be having your own experience of pregnancy. A lot of people feel like shit for a lot of the time during the pregnancy, and they can't wait to have their baby and to not be in the experience of being pregnant anymore. And there are some people that have wonderful, amazing pregnancies They love every moment of that pregnancy. I think it's easy for us to think as moms that we've got ownership over all of that. And to a certain degree, mom's health status going into the pregnancy determines certain aspects of how she feels and how she functions. But there's also this entirely other element of each child being their own being and them bringing with them whatever energetic imprints or what have you. And like each pregnancy, just like each child is different, is just a different experience. And I think especially for second-time moms, third-time moms, fourth-time moms, it might hit harder each subsequent pregnancy because you're not in the same body that you were when you were a maiden and expecting your first child. You have a lot of different stressors in your life. You're taking care of other tiny humans now at this point. It's just a completely different ballgame. So if you're struggling with how you are maybe judging yourself for the way that you are walking through your pregnancy experience, I hear you and I see you. And I too am working on giving myself grace, working on receiving support, and trying to be as present as possible with this next human and making sure that they have an environment where they feel loved and where they feel wanted. And at the same time, balance and juggle all the other balls I got going in the air. So thank you for letting me share with you guys. I'm going to go sip another tiny amount of my nettle tea, eat a bite of banana and these boring crackers, and sit upright for the next hour and a half, lest I awaken the burn from the belly below. Talk to you guys soon.